Hello, it's Emily Moorhouse-Aires here from Healthscape, and I'm going to be talking to you today about chronobiology. So, where does the word come from? Chronos, which is an ancient Greek word meaning time, and biology, which is all about the science of life. In technical terms, chronobiology is a field of biology that looks at the cyclic phenomena in living organisms. So that's not just humans, that's also in animals and plants, and their adaptation to the rhythms of the sun and the moon. So, but put simply, throughout the day, the months, and the years, the body, just like the four seasons, goes through change in an orderly fashion. And these changes over time are summarized by the term chronobiology. So there are three basic cycles of chronobiology. The one that we're most familiar with is called the circadian rhythm, which is used to describe our body's internal 24-hour cycle, or our sleep-wake cycle. And pretty much this dictates all of our physiological activity and is governed by our hormones. And these hormones are released by our internal timers or clocks. Isn't it cool? Our bodies have their own clock. So genetically, we have timers in our bodies that control this fundamental rhythm and keep us in sync with nature, and these are called clock genes. There are two types of important timers and clocks in the body. There's the central clock, which is pretty much our light-dark clock, which helps us to regulate our sleep-wake cycle. And there's also the peripheral clocks. Every organ has its own cycle. Okay, so the central clock, the light-dark clock, when light hits the eye, it activates a part of the brain that helps to regulate the body's sleep-wake cycle. Light causes an increase in brain activity to prepare us for waking, and conversely, when it's dark, our body produces melatonin, the sleep hormone, to prepare our body for sleep. On a side note, you can see how now that we've got a lot of incandescent lighting and we have lights on, artificial lights in the evening after it's dark and we're in front of screen, you can see how this can sort of throw us off and affect our melatonin production and affect our circadian rhythm and affect our sleep. Another thing to note with this is that the central clock is very much set in the time zone that we are born in. So it can actually take years and years to fully correct your body's rhythm when you move to the other side of the world, when you move country. And in fact, some people say it never quite fully adapts. The peripheral clocks. So each organ has its own clock, which dictates the timings of its processes such as cleaning and repairing, etc. Unlike the central clock, these organs' clocks adapt a lot faster to the environment. An example of this is that night shift workers will start to feel hungry at different times of the day or of the night than when they were working during normal daylight hours. However, over a period of time, when the peripheral clocks become out of sync with the central clock, this negatively affects their health and function. And another example of that, going back to our lovely night shift workers, it shows that this desynchronicity is one of the main reasons why shift workers are at a greater risk of disease, because their body is sort of out of whack between the peripheral and the central clock. So why is all this important? Pretty much the take-home point here is that the more we are aligned with our natural body rhythms and with the cycles of nature, the better. These factors have just such a big influence in disease, healing, and health. Through research, we know that different parts of our physiology are heightened or lessened at different times of the day. We are also aware of different organs and when they're going through their processing and cleaning time, which is important for the organ's function and repair. Okay, to understand a little bit of what I'm going to talk about next in terms of how PH360 and personalised health uses this chronobiology information, I want to give you a quick overview of some of the science of embryology. So when we're conceived and the embryo is developing in the womb, there's three layers that are developed in the embryo. The endoderm here, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm. Okay, so don't worry about all the details of everything that's developed in these layers, but pretty much in the endoderm, the organs and tissues that develop are mainly to do with digestion, the digestive organs. In the layers of the ectoderm, it's mainly the organs to do with thinking, so sort of like our brain and our spinal cord. And in the layers of the mesoderm, as you can see from this list of stuff here, like the muscles and the blood and the heart, you can see that a lot of these organs and tissues are related to movement. Okay, so obviously we all have all three of these layers developing during our embryological development, but what we know is through a mix of the genetics we get from our mum and dad and the environment in our mum's womb, we will have certain layers that become more pronounced during this embryological development. Often one or two of these layers will be a little bit more pronounced. And these embryo layers correspond directly to your body structure and tell us a lot of things about how our body develops. And it also determines which organs through which we will show the greatest sensitivity and also the greatest strength. Okay, so from chronobiology, we know how each organ is affected at different times of the day. When you take into consideration the timings of the organs, depending on the genetic predisposition that we just talked about in the last slide, we are able to determine when a body is most affected. Well, of course, everybody will go through the normal organ regulation cycle. The bodies with a dominance for the organ that is active at that time is going to be more affected than others. So you can see here through research, you might not be able to see the details here, but you can kind of see the timings that we now know different organs kind of do their thing. All right, so all of this pretty much gives us an insight into the time of the day that is particularly important for each person to best meet their personal needs. It gives us guidance around the best times for things, such as when it's best to rest, when it's best to exercise, when it's good to eat, when it's good to fast, when you're well, when you'll be well prepared for some really high intense thinking, and also when you need to have some mental downtime, etc. So for an example, if you had during your embryological development, if you had more energy put into the development of the endodermal layer, remember they are sort of the digestive organs, then we would call your body type an endomorph. An endomorph has a dominance of the liver, the lung, the digestive tract, and the pancreas. So due to this, from around 2 a.m. to 9 a.m., they're going to be heavily affected if these organs are not able to regulate, which is why you'll see some of the recommendations for an endomorph in terms of eating later in the morning, sleeping till later, and having a slower, more relaxed start of the day so the organs get a chance to kind of rest, recover, and do the things that they need to do. So that's just one example of how this information is sort of catered for. So depending on your body, you will need to follow a specific protocol at different times of the day to be in your best health. Now, the great thing is you don't need to understand everything I've just talked about. You don't need to understand chronobiology or the other sciences in depth because this is all accounted for and a lot more by PH360, the personalised health platform. And this is how the power hour is generated for each person as well. So, yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty advanced. And I hope that you've got more of an understanding now of what chronobiology is and why this chronobiology or the timings are so important, such an important consideration in terms of our health and how the personalised health platform takes into consideration some of this information to give us a little bit more of a personalised insight into the timings that are important to each of us. All right. Thank you very much for listening, guys. It's been great. Talk to you soon.